Rishi Sunak has 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Streeter. Early one morning in March last year, one of my constituents opened her front door in Wensleydale to find a group of police officers standing there with a warrant to search her house. Having lost her husband of 35 years just weeks before, she watched while the officers upturned every inch of the home they had shared. As she told me, it was like seeing your house burgled in front of your very eyes. My constituent is Lady Diana Britton, and her husband Leon was once my constituency's representative in this House. By any measure, Leon Britton was a great man. Our nation's youngest Home Secretary since Churchill, he helped guide our country through the long night of the miners' strikes. As Secretary of State for Trade, he played an instrumental role in creating the World Trade Organization. And as Britain's EU Commissioner, he won the nickname Bulldozer for his immovable commitment to UK interests. In pursuing what he knew to be right, regardless of who told him otherwise, Leon soon proved that he had, in spirit at least, been a son of Yorkshire all along. But this was also a man who, in the last year of his life, dying from cancer, received a phone call from the Metropolitan Police. He was told he was to be investigated for an allegation of rape, some 48 years old. This was a phone call made despite the fact that the officer in charge of the case described the investigation as grossly disproportionate. This was a phone call made despite the fact that the case, as the Director of Public Prosecutions would later confirm, at no time met the necessary threshold for a realistic prospect of conviction. Mr. Streeter, no one is above the law. It is, of course, right that the police pursue vigorously allegations of criminality. But in the case of my constituent, it is clear that the Metropolitan Police committed grave errors. As the Home Affairs Select Committee said, the police acted in fear of media criticism and public cynicism. This is not the proper basis for police operations. The pursuit of justice is not an exercise in public relations. Commissioner Hogan Howe is to be commended for initiating the excellent independent Enriquez report into the Met's performance. But the review is damning and lists over 40 different failings. I will touch on just 3. Firstly, current police guidance dictates that officers must believe a complainant's allegations and complainants should be referred to as victims. This is a dangerous principle. It flies in the face of the most fundamental principle of our justice system, that an accused is innocent until proven guilty. It goes beyond the reasonable requirement that officers should treat seriously and respectfully any allegations. And it creates a mindset where investigators may be tempted to fit facts to an accusation rather than approach their investigation with an open mind. It was precisely this kind of thinking that led officers to allegedly mislead a judge about the credibility of a witness, thereby obtaining an unjustified search warrant that caused my constituent Lady Britton so much distress. Secondly, there were serious shortcomings in the way the Metropolitan Police interacted with the media. Our laws rightly preserve the anonymity of the accuser for sexual offences, and yet for the accused, our protections have repeatedly proved inadequate. Current police practice of confirming to the media the age and location of suspects is clearly incompatible with police policy that suspects should maintain their anonymity until charged. For someone like Leon, whose long years of public service made him easily identifiable, his anonymity was lost well before it should have been, with devastating consequences. Lady Britton, herself a dedicated magistrate, described to me how she and Leon, by this stage, in this time in the late stages of cancer, were chased down narrow Yorkshire lanes by photographers, and how their daughters fended off journalists outside their home. I appreciate the delicate arguments involved in considering statutory protection of anonymity pre-charge, but the failings of Operation Midland provide a compelling case for review. Lastly, and most unforgivably of all, the police failed to inform the Britton family that their investigations were no longer being pursued. They did find the time to inform the complainant, but it was not until 9 months later that Lady Britton read in a newspaper what she had known all along, that her husband had done nothing wrong. This delay meant Leon died without ever seeing his innocence confirmed. It is shameful that the man who led our police force through one of its most challenging periods found himself so poorly repaid at its hands. In conclusion, Mr. Streeter, I have no doubt that if Leon was standing in my place today, his fierce intellect would have made a far better case than I ever could. What would be foremost in his mind, however, is that the lessons are learned, and learned properly. In future, nobody should ever suffer the same injustice that he and his family have had to endure.
Thank you.